A very good evening. I'm Adarsh and I'm back once again on News 9 Facebook Live a little over 5:30 p.m. But yes, I'm back. And yesterday I was not around as it was my weekly off, but nonetheless back once again. And today we're going to speak about the AAROGYA Response application. Now this app, in case if you've heard about it, you may know that it has been making quite a bit of noise in the last week or so at least. Now this, in fact, AAROGYA Response app is an app that is launched by the central government itself, by the Union Government of India, and this app has been mandated for use by the private and public sector employees across the country. So it doesn't matter which sector you're working in, you will have to download this application and make use of it. So this, in fact, is the instruction that has come in from the central government itself. So what does this app do? In a sense, this AAROGYA Response app goes ahead and obtains certain information about your whereabouts through GPS tracking, and it also takes a few key details about your essential profile and saves all that information, and it does that for any user who's downloaded the AAROGYA Response app. And this is done in a sense to somehow be able to better prepared for the fight against COVID-19. So this very app, in fact, ties the details of people with the healthcare system itself. And through this app, in case if any assistance is required, any help is required, and if one person is facing some sort of a symptom that is pertaining to COVID-19, they can immediately reach out for help through this very AAROGYA Response app. Now, this app, in a sense, is also being used to ensure that a tab is kept on the number of people who are on the move, the number of people who are out there carrying out their duties, carrying out their work. Doesn't really matter if it is a private sector employee or a public sector employee. Now, whenever you have applications such as the AAROGYA Response app being launched in any country, especially in a country like India, you have a few doubts that are raised against the app itself, and these doubts are pertaining to the privacy issues, whether this AAROGYA Response app compromises the details of a certain individual who probably feeds in all the details into this application. So yes, a few questions have been raised, not just by ethical hackers across the world, but also by politicians right here in India as well. Right from Asaduddin Owaisi to the Congress, you've had several politicians almost in the opposition who've come out and voiced their concerns about the AAROGYA Response app and about how this app apparently is being used to snoop on people. So yes, a lot of questions have been raised, but in this brief interaction, we'll look at a few pertinent points, a few pertinent questions that have been raised, a few pertinent doubts and issues that have been flagged off by ethical hackers, some of the most famous ones across the world. And we'll also tell you as to how the government has responded to these privacy concerns, these questions that have been raised against the AAROGYA Response app. And in this interaction, I'll just probably give you an idea as to how various other countries are dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic in terms of how they're making use of technology in their respective countries and how applications are slowly becoming the order of the day. In fact, we'll start by really taking up straight away the issue of one particular ethical hacker who's in fact gone ahead and has posed a few questions regarding the AAROGYA Response app. He says on his Twitter handle, "A security issue has been found in your app. The privacy of 90 million Indians is at stake. Can you contact me in private? Regards, PS Rahul Gandhi was right." The source code of AAROGYA Response needs to be open source. When you ask or force people to install an application, they have the right to know what the app is really doing. If you love your country, publish the source code. So these are a few doubts. In a sense, the hacker has spoken about how there is a major security issue in terms of how a single line of coding on the application itself will reveal so much data, will reveal data of all of the Indians, 90 million Indians. The data that is at stake at this point in time is what this particular ethical hacker has claimed. He's also speaking about how the source code of this AAROGYA Response app needs to be, in a sense, open source, so that there is a proper watch, there is a proper a tab is really kept on the entire working, the entire system of the app itself. The first time I analyzed AAROGYA Response app, it was 1 month ago. With one command line, it was possible to open any internal file of the application It's no more possible on the latest version. They fixed this issue silently. So here you have an hacker claiming that with just about one command line, it was possible to really open this application and source information, private data of millions of employees sitting across the country. So it was probably a loophole that the Arogya Setu app had up until recently, before the Arogya Setu committee itself went ahead and fixed this issue silently. So it did not happen on a public domain. There was no word from the government as well as to how data was in a sense freely accessible by use of just one or two command lines programming. A bit of programming could lead you to the information data of several Indian citizens. So this problem was persistent, it existed, but they fixed it. The government went ahead and fixed it without anybody's knowledge. So that is what is being pointed out by this ethical hacker. Now obviously this app it becomes all the more worrisome for the Indians sitting at large, given the fact that this collects the user's location at certain points in the process. In fact, when the user were to really download the application and go ahead with the whole registration process, you are bound to allow the application to access your GPS location. So in a sense, this app ensures that you're being tracked. And it is also being said that all of this information that is sourced by the Arogya Setu app will be kept in a sense at least up until 2 years. So why is the logic of 2 years? Why should this information be kept for 2 years? Does that mean that we will continue to see troubled times for the next 2 years? And what will happen to all of this information that you and I give on the Arogya Setu app after the coming 2 years? Whether all of this information will be deleted, what will happen to this information is again a question that has no answer from the government's end at this point in time. So this is more of a self-assessment that you need to do when you have downloaded the application and when you're going ahead with the registration process itself. And each time when a user voluntarily shares their contact tracing data from within the app, or in case a self-assessment indicates COVID positive. So a few nitty-gritties about how this app really works. And in fact, this app was created, it was developed by the National Informatics Center under the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, and is actively being pushed by the government of India. They've gone ahead and have asked all employees, doesn't matter whether they're from the public or private sector, to go ahead and download this application as the one-stop solution in a sense for contact tracing as the COVID lockdown continues in the country. Not just employees who belong to the private and public sector, even those who are probably in the containment zones have been advised to download this application, so that movement of all the people is kept in check, and so that all necessary vital details are in a sense stored in this application, which in a sense tweaks the way in which we respond to the COVID-19 pandemic itself. So this is how India as such is making use of technology in its fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, that apart, in another update on Wednesday, in fact, the Health Ministry went ahead and said that the contact tracing mobile application will in fact be available on all feature phones as well, and for including the citizens with feature phones and landline under the protection of Arogya Setu. The Arogya Setu Interactive Voice Response System, the IVRS, has also been implemented, and this service will be available across the country. So on one hand, you have questions being raised pertaining to the safety, the privacy concerns of the Arogya Setu app itself. On the other hand, you have the Health Ministry and the Arogya Setu committee itself going ahead and pushing for in fact, they are in a sense ensuring that Arogya Setu app develops even further and pushing it to various platforms is what they're doing. So nonetheless, given the kind of questions that were raised by this ethical hacker about how information is freely available on Arogya Setu app, though it has been fixed nonetheless, the Arogya Setu itself has come out with a response. And in response to how the hacker claimed that the application fetches user location on a few occasions, this, in fact, the user location is accessed by the app through a few points in the registration process. So the response from the Arogya Setu was that this is by design and is clearly detailed in the privacy policy, reproducing the same for everyone's benefit. We fetch a user's location and store on the server in a secure, encrypted, anonymized manner. At the time of registration, at the time of self-assessment, when a user submits their contact tracing data voluntarily through the app, or when we fetch the contact tracing data of a user after they have turned COVID-19 positive. So here you have the Arogya Setu app itself going ahead and claiming as to how the fact that the app seeks the location, the GPS location at various points throughout the registration process is in a sense by design. The app itself is created in such a way that it takes the locations of any particular individual who is going through the registration process, and they're claiming that it is for everyone's benefit. So this very user's location is taken, it is then stored on the server in a secure and encrypted manner, at least at this point in time, because up until now it was not so, because the hacker clearly claimed that with one single line of coding he was able to access a lot of information on the Arogya Setu app. So now in a sense it may have become more secure and more encrypted. Now the other point that the ethical hacker raised as to how the user can get the COVID-19 statistics displayed on home screen by changing the radius and latitude, longitude using a script. So this is again very technical, but it speaks about how the radius parameters are fixed and can only take one of the 5 values, that is 500 meters, 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers, 5 kilometers and 10 kilometers. These values are standard parameters posted with HTTP headers is what the Arogya Setu has responded, and they've clearly gone ahead and stated that no personal information of any user has been proven to be at risk by this ethical hacker. We are continuously testing and upgrading our systems. Team Arogya Setu assures everyone that no data or security breach has been identified. They have also gone ahead and thanked the ethical hacker for flagging off these issues, and they've also encouraged the people at large to go ahead and point out any particular vulnerability that the app in a sense has at this point in time. So this again really sums up as to what India's effort has been pertaining to how to go ahead and make use of technology in its fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. You have an app that has been developed by the government here itself, right here, and they've gone ahead and they have pushed the app for use by private and public sector employees and also those in containment zones. But a few questions have been raised, not just by hackers but also by politicians, as to how safe and how secure are the details once they are fed into this very application. So this application will nonetheless be developed over a period, and we'll get to see as to how matters will really pan out. But even when we look back, even when it comes to Aadhaar as well, a few such questions have been raised as to how safe data really is that has been accessed by the UIDAI. So it remains to be seen as to how else will the government respond, and how else will the Arogya Setu app be developed, and whether you will have a more sort of a more elaborate way or elaborate explanation that will really come in from the government itself when it comes to the Arogya Setu app. So with that, I would like to call the brief interaction off. It has been in a sense about how technology is being made use of to fight COVID-19 pandemic. One only hopes that we are up right there when it comes to other countries in their way of dealing with COVID-19 pandemic. We'll be back tomorrow once again with another trending topic, and we'll try and shed more light on what people are saying and how the government itself is responding to all of these queries and questions. This is Adarsh signing off.